Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Senior Editor, Bloomberg BusinessWeek, Diane Brady.
With a mic behind my head that I keep feeling. Thank you, everybody, and I'm so delighted. We're going to start with a conversation with President Benigno Aquino III, President of the Philippines, and then we're going to bring out our other guests. And the topic is commodities, security, but I'd like to start with your sense of just the overall environment, because obviously supply and demand is a critical factor in this. What are you seeing in terms of what are your own areas of concern? You can root it in Asia Pacific, but since we have you, we'd be remiss not to get your sense of the economy and its growing, and tell us a little bit about that.
Okay. Well, thank you, Diane. The Philippines is undergoing a transformation at this point in time. We are a country definitely very international in scope in terms of any problems that are besetting any nation in the world or any groups of nations in the world. The Philippines is undoubtedly affected. For instance, the turmoil in the Middle East does affect remittances of our overseas Filipino workers. Japan is a major trading partner. The earthquake, the tsunami, and the radioactivity does impact. America is one of our biggest trading partners, and the slowing down, I guess, of the world's economy, the reordering of the same, finds us in a double transformative stage. And if we are not nimble enough to exploit the potentials, then the people, 95 million Filipinos, undoubtedly will suffer. So we are striving to become a country that is extremely business friendly, that will maximize the potentials inherent in our country, and most of all, something that is geared towards our people, who we believe is the greatest single resource we have in our country.
So when we talk about commodities, it spans, gold to rice, and I want to talk about it in some of the different buckets. And let's start with food security, because obviously that was an issue a couple of years ago. What's been done to address that, and how far are you on that path?
Well, the previous administration gave us a legacy of tremendous problems, and perhaps
they always do.
No, but a totally different orientation. Their focus was mostly achieving political stability, meaning keeping themselves in power, rather than doing that which is right. So we've had to change, as part of the transformative character of our administration, a lot of the concepts. So in terms of food security, I am very pleased to note that our agricultural minister is already giving us a guarantee, number one, that there's no need for further importation of rice. With the next harvest due January, we will have an excess over that which is mandated as the strategic reserve in terms of rice. And what was done was not radical changes, but rather just doing what was necessary. For instance, providing certified seeds, which were actually genuinely certified seeds, providing the necessary inputs, helping upland farmers with their marketing campaign, not making it profitable to import rather than to plant. So all of these very basic steps led to 3/4 of bumper harvest, enough that gives us that measure over and above with that which is necessary for the first quarter of 2012. And to have done that all in a period of a year's time, and to have so much interest from neighboring countries who want to participate in our agricultural sector, and in the quantities that they do want, is truly encouraging.
I want to talk about those neighboring countries in a minute, since you've certainly had challenges there. But let's move to some of the issues, for example, in energy as well, because the Philippines is known to have rich resources, geothermal, hydro, but yet things like electricity rates, I think, are the highest in Asia, and infrastructure remains an issue. Talk a little bit about that, because that's clearly a security concern.
Yes. Well, in terms of energy, we're second to America only in terms of exploiting geothermal resources. We have managed to help several other countries in terms of sharing the expertise that we do already have. There is a new field that is going to be brought up. Well, it's going to start, I understand, by next year by an American company in the northern portion of the Philippines. There are substantial gas deposits that we believe are already on the proven scale at this point in time that will dwarf the existing Malampaya oil fields. Some of them are in areas that are part of the contentious disputes as to how will sovereignty over the same. And we are working on steps to determine who actually owns them, consistent with the United Nations Convention on Law of the Sea.
How do you think that's going to work out? I mean, give us a sense of that.
Well, we are hoping that all the signatories to the United Nations Convention will adhere to the stipulations of the convention, and amongst them are the 200-mile exclusive economic zone, which clearly is shows that the areas in dispute are in our favor, at least portions of the areas in dispute, those at which we are claiming we have a solid claim to. And there are various mechanisms that we can go to for arbitration to settle that matter once and for all, and to have these resources benefit not only our country but also the neighbors in the region, and will transform our energy needs from dependence on Middle East crude at the present time to more indigenous sources. We have a very vibrant renewable energy sector. At the end of the day, the first phase is the abundance of electrical supply. Then we have a wholesale electronic spot market that is supposed to induce competition that will bring down the rates, which eventually will also be an inducement for the return of manufacturing back in the country. So it's energy security, also making the rates that much more reasonable for power, both in the electricity side and transforming, for instance, transportation from diesel currently to natural gas.
What is the role of foreign investment? Because you've seen that there's a lot of backlash in a lot of countries around the world about the sense that people are giving their resources away. As you sort of develop this further, what do you think is the role that your neighboring countries have, and not neighboring countries? Obviously, multinationals have great interests as well.
Well, capital technology transfer obviously are the positive gauge for our country. But at the same time, the set of rules and regulations in our country do not lend themselves to a win-win situation. Win-win especially for our people. So we're having a review of the policies involved. For instance, we have fines that are so minuscule that they are not even a nuisance to those that would, shall we say, violate our environmental laws. So they have to have enough of a bite to enforce and thereby preserve the ecology of our country, get the people's support for all of these ventures, and wind up with a stable field whereby everybody knows their responsibilities to each other and performs based on that responsibilities, leading up to long-term relationships rather than flash-in-the-pan operations, which will redound to everybody's benefit.
And talk a little bit about how you would like the environment, either the regulatory environment or a group like APEC. Where do you see sort of the role of trade and closer coordination, and how does the Philippines fit into that?
Well, if APEC can be the mechanism whereby everybody looks at interests not on a parochial or national scale, but rather on a regional scale, then that leads to attainment of an understanding that redounds to everybody's benefit, rather than be exploitative of each other. And any exploitation now basically sets the groundwork for less cooperation down the line. The action and the reaction does not do anyone any benefit. So from the get-go, when we do have this opportunity in areas, for instance, the examples I can think of right now are conflict diamonds, for instance. Limited the market, stabilized the areas where these conflict diamonds came in, protecting the endangered species. So the same thing with mining. If it is not really just a question of extracting this and not understanding the concerns, the needs of the areas where they're being extracted upon, then there is you're setting the tone for total lack of cooperation down the line in various other fields where the situations are reversed. But setting the tone now, or from the get-go, understanding the other's needs will undoubtedly have the long-term relationships that can be mutually beneficial, perhaps in perpetuity. Perhaps I'm very idealistic at this point in time, but we, excuse me, as a people, tend to trust in God and really work with the cognizance that He will be providing that which we don't have.
I do want to ask, and we'll bring our guests out in a minute, about China. People look to China, obviously, in terms of the strategies as an investor, as a consumer, as a producer. Talk about your own view, relationship with China, and obviously there's particular areas of conflict, but on a more macro level, what do you look to China in terms of its role in the region, good and ill, in terms of some of this security?
Well, a 1.3 billion market is really a very potent driving market force that has to be contended with. I'm relatively new as being a head of state, dealing with the very big brother nearby. There are so many instances where they have become that benevolent big brother and has assisted us in attaining our own goals.
Where are they benevolent big brother?
For instance, there are various grants that have been given to us to study wind patterns in the Philippines, I understand, which will help us in terms of wind generation or wind electricity generation through wind sources. Studies for various infrastructure like the railway system, assistance in disaster risk preparedness, and the list goes on, and also in financing various large-scale infrastructure projects. Sometimes there are tensions and there are conflicts, and we recognize that they are also a system relatively young in its transformative stage, from basically the era of Premier Deng Xiaoping's start of the openness. They are still defining exactly the entire model of their state and how they govern their people.
Wasn't Deng Xiaoping the late 80s? You'd
True.
say they're still new.
Compared to America with 200 years, or England with about 400 or 500 years, 30 years should be in this hybrid system, might be considered relatively young. So that if one looks at them as a work in progress and exercises a lot of patience and seeks out those who have like mind from the opposite side, then the idea of, again, enhanced cooperation and mutual growth can be further assured.
Have you ever hiked in a rainforest in the rain? Do you ever wonder where all of the water that falls on our lush forests ends up? Could any of this water ever make its way to your house? Let's take a look at the role of forest cover in our water supply. Native Hawaiian rainforests, with their layers of trees, shrubs, and ferns, absorb water like a giant sponge. Rain drips down the trees to the lower forest layers where it soaks into the ground. Some of the water is absorbed by the plant's roots and transpired through leaves. The leaves help to slow down the raindrops, allowing the water to soak deep into the soil, where it can become part of the groundwater. If water in your house comes from a deep county well, the water coming out of your faucet may have originally fallen on the rainforest. The groundwater is the source of freshwater springs that feed into streams. During a rain, surface water that runs over the land flows into streams too. An area that drains to a stream or other body of water is called a watershed. These forested valley walls are the watershed for the stream that flows through the valley. Water is slowly released from this forest sponge, even in times when rainfall is low. In this way, there can be a nearly steady supply of pure water flowing into streams. Began in the rainforest up in Monowili Valley. Water that falls on this forested watershed makes its way downstream and eventually flows into Kawainui Marsh. Students investigated many of the plants in the forest, including the non-native lipstick tree that provides a source of pigment for dyes. They had a chance to appreciate the special sounds and sights of the forest and record their observations. At the stream that runs through the forest, teams of students measure different aspects of water quality. One team measured the temperature of the stream water. Other teams measured the level of dissolved oxygen in the water and the pH, or acidity, of the stream. Plants and animals in the stream are adapted to a certain range of temperature, oxygen, and acidity. The students who investigated the stream life found native opal or shrimp. They also found the non-native animals that people have introduced to streams that compete with our native stream animals. Downstream from the forest, the stream winds past homes and flows near busy streets. Students made their way downstream and again recorded their observations and measurements of the stream quality. In this area, runoff from people's homes and streets adds soil and pollutants to the stream and decreases the quality of the water. What happens to the water quality as the stream flows into a channel alongside the marsh? To find out, students lowered a bucket to obtain water samples. They recorded their measurements and concluded that the water quality was not as good in this wide channel as it had been in the forest. Changes to the land along the stream contributed to the difference in water quality. Students in Ms. Hupel's class hope to present their observations at an upcoming community meeting of scientists and neighborhood volunteers who want to protect the water quality in their community. Our island forests that are home to so many unique plants and animals are also vital as a watershed cover. When we damage or remove forests, we have a negative impact on native plants and animals and our fresh water supply. With reduced forest cover, less water soaks into the groundwater supply and more runs off as surface water. During heavy rains, there is an increased chance of flash flooding and more erosion of soil into streams and onto reefs.
Our planet's water systems and resources are dependent upon mankind's understanding that everything we put into our water affects not only the quality of life on Earth, but the quality of life for our communities. Pollution and abuse of our water systems and tributaries is a major concern globally. Every person has a role to play, and we all must learn and understand the effect and impact we have on our water. Having clean water, whether from our ocean, lakes, or streams, depends on how man acts and takes responsibility in using our resources of water. Industrial, environmental, and water pollution is a growing concern. It has been suggested that water pollution and lack of clean drinking water is a leading cause of death and disease worldwide, with more than 14,000 people dying daily. These numbers are rising. In China alone, some 90% of the Chinese cities suffer from some degrees of water pollution. And the industrial pollutants that's flowing into the water and tributaries is growing every year, causing massive alarms for people and communities across the regions being affected and not having safe drinking water. It is vital to understand that when we contaminate our water, we're not only shutting down the biological systems and depleting the oxygen, but we're basically killing ourselves. So understanding where pollutants come from and how they're carried in our water systems is an essential part of tracing where and how our water is becoming more and more unsafe. Water pollution is a major global problem which requires ongoing education, evaluation, and revision of the water resource policies at all levels, individually, internationally, and with communities and countries, looking at aquifers and wells, surface and ground water. It's important that worldwide we take a look and understand how the sources of contamination and pollution are carried into our rivers, our streams, and oceans, whether by a pipe, a ditch, industrial, environmental, or by our own human hands. What are the impacts we're creating? And what is the long-term effects worldwide of continually contaminating our water? Industrial discharge into our waterways, pollution and contaminants is creating unsafe water with high levels of pathogens. From inadequate treatment sewage discharge to older cities with aging infrastructures of leaky sewage collection systems, pipes, drains, pumps, and valves. Large visible trash polluting our waters, marine debris floating, runoff from our chemicals, thermal pollutions. We need to be responsible in managing our water systems and what we're putting into it. As individual citizens, corporations, utilities, and communities, we need to reduce the effects to our water systems and the environment. Without clean water, we will not survive.
Jesse, are there plans to try to get, I heard there's a lack of oxidization in the bay. Are there plans after this initial great step to...
I'll get close to you.
I'm from Hawaii.
Yeah, what were you asking?
I'm from Hawaii. Some of the scientists mentioned to me that there's a lack of oxidization in the bay. This is a great initial step, so much cleaning, but are there any plans to try to re-oxygenate the bay?
Depending on how much it will cost. In fact, I recall there was one company that tried it along one stero.
Yes.
We don't have the final determination of the outcomes yet. But we will examine what is the most cost-effective way of doing it. So aside from cleaning it up, and hopefully in cleaning it up, we'll be able to improve not only the physical condition, but the chemical condition as well. So this is an important first step, in as much as I've said, we'll be doing this every month. Just a reminder and also as a tangible effort to clean it up.
It's amazing from June till now, July, September, October, the improvement is massive. Congratulations
yes,
to Manila.
And certainly we'll, after cleaning it up, we'll work with the City of Manila and City of Pasay, not only to clean it up, but make it as a welcome site for people like you.
Thank you. Salamat po.
It's not just I guess the end challenge is make it as a tourist destination as well. Meaning not only the lights, not only the general ambience, but the smell and the aesthetics.
It's so much amazing. The effort that the Filipino people have made just from summertime to now is
That's
tremendous.
True.
Tremendous.
And I think that the other next step is go to the tributaries. We cannot clean this up unless we're able to clean the tributaries.
The current, because
the steros that are the tributaries of Manila Bay. So we're looking at that as well. Hopefully, this regular month-to-month clean-up will mobilize more people. I discussed this with Secretary Pai as well. And so we're starting with the DILG and the LGUs. Hopefully in time, the other national government agencies here will also provide one day I just assume that everyone provides a day. Probably we can do this weekly depending on which agency will do it.
It's truly a global example for the rest of the world.
Thank you.
Ibalik ang kulay, ulap na tubig. Hoy Pilipino, ito ang ilog ng buhay mo. Ito ang ilog ng buhay mo. Lahat ng mami sa Manila Bay ay alisin. Ibalik ang gana, ang sigla ng mga isla, napakendeng-kendeng sa ating dambayan. Hoy Pinoy, panahon na para magkaisa. Sa bayan mo ng Manila Bay, tayo'y magsama-sama. Ibalik ang kulay, ulap na tubig. Hoy Pilipino, ito ang ilog ng buhay mo. Ito ang ilog ng buhay mo.